The preseason is in the books for the Indianapolis Colts, but there's still plenty to talk about in Colts country. How did Anthony Richardson progress throughout the preseason? What's the latest on Jonathan Taylor and his trade request? And what about those roster cuts that are happening tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here, as always, by my fellow writer, analyst, and colleague at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. Drake, I wouldn't say it was a non-eventful weekend. Certainly today has been eventful, especially for us over at Horseshoe Huddle, which thank you all so much for all of your support over this month of August. It's truly been absolutely amazing. But we're near, it's less than 2 weeks until the Colts take the field against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We know Anthony Richardson's going to be out there, but will Jonathan Taylor be out there next to him? How are you doing, Drake?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to say that the preseason is officially behind us all, and unfortunately, it's the product of waiting so long in the NFL for the regular season start. But now there's a week to wait. You got to wait an extra week. But I'm excited to talk about Anthony Richardson. I'm excited to talk about his performance in the preseason, and of course, we'll dive into the Jonathan Taylor news. But that's gonna be afterward.
Right. We'll start out. We got a lot of things to talk about. Shout out to my wife, Danielle Moore, with the first super sticker of the evening. She also says you need to move your Colt stuff. I can't see it. So yes, I did. I am in the middle of rearranging my office. So
there it is.
Right there is all the Colt stuff on the Colts wall. My big head is blocking it, but hey, I appreciate it to Danielle. And then we have Lawrence Stogner with his super chat of $2. Thank you so much, Lawrence. And you know what? I'm going to highlight Lawrence's comment from earlier. Sup, gents? I'm very excited to watch the Colts this year. Think I'm a Papa Court when they ship JT out. Steichen wants volunteers. And it could be as soon as tomorrow. Hey, it might even break in the middle of our episode tonight, which would be wild. Don't think so, but we'll see. Want to also give a shout out to Nathan Comanci, who's in here earlier. We made a lot of roster cuts. Colts are currently at 66. We'll talk about those roster cuts later in the show. Bring the Juice. Appreciate the support from the Bring the Juice pod. Definitely go check those guys out. They're hard at work trying to bring you guys Colts content. Appreciate the support. NFL Nerd, are we taking this deadline seriously? Probably should use air quotes when saying deadline as it pertains to the Jonathan Taylor situation. So we'll definitely talk about that and a lot more. Stats Matt is already in here. Can we get tomorrow over with and move on already? I feel like a lot of Colts fans are feeling that way as well. But let's dive into it. Oh, and then before we got two more in the comments. We got Joe Denman, as always here, and then the CFO of Horseshoe Huddle, Patrick Wire. His plan on where to take over the country is behind him. Classic. So let's dive right in. If you haven't done so already, please follow us on all of our social medias, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on Twitter, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live, so you never miss an episode or a chance to be in the chat. And if you can't catch us live, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star review. So Drake, we've got a lot to talk about tonight, so let's dive right in. We're going to start out with Anthony Richardson and the progress that he has made throughout the preseason. So we haven't talked to you guys on the Horseshoe Huddle podcast since the Colts played the Eagles, came out with a W in Philadelphia. Anthony Richardson and the starters played an entire half there in Philadelphia, and Richardson had again some really good, some bad highs and lows, just kind of what we can expect out of this rookie quarterback. 6 for 17 for 78 yards, 5 carries for 38 yards. He had some throws where he looked really, really good, Drake. Other times he missed his wide receivers, seemed like his footwork wasn't there. But I think you could really see how much his running ability is going to affect opposing defenses. Yes, it wasn't against the starters for the Eagles, but at the same time, they're still NFL players, and the Colts weren't exactly trying to scheme anything either. So, taking all that into account, and after taking a few days to digest that game, what are your thoughts about his performance against the Philadelphia Eagles last Saturday night? Or I'm sorry, last Thursday night?
I don't think that the numbers really, if you look at the numbers for face value and you happen to miss the game, you really have to go back and look at the highlights at least, because they don't really reflect how much and how well he played. I thought he was able to navigate the pocket per usual. He's been doing that very well. He did a great job of getting out, running in space, throwing on the run. I still think he needs to get acquainted to the speed of the NFL defense, because he almost threw a pick six early in the game. The Eagles definitely pretty much, I can't remember who it was, but the defensive back ran the route for the wide receiver, and he still threw it anyway. He was like right on his hip. So he's got to adjust to the NFL defense, but he only took one sack from a team that was really bringing the pressure at times. But a few passes were also dropped, which again, we got to look into outside of the numbers. Josh Downs had a rare drop. Alec Pierce, while he had a great training camp, he's kind of struggled a little bit in the preseason. You look for those things to probably iron themselves out, but he had a drop or two. So a couple passes were probably supposed to be caught, but overall, you got to be happy. I mean, we said this would be the biggest test that he would face. I don't care if it's second and third string. Those, again, the Colts had a unique situation. The Bills played their second and third stringers, and the Eagles did too, but they have some of the best depth on defense in the league, on opposite ends of the conferences. So I thought that given the situation and given a couple drops here and there, I thought that Anthony Richardson actually played pretty well against Philly.
Yeah, and I think even against the Bills played their starters for that first couple series.
Oh, that's right, they did.
Even after Richardson kind of settled in after that early interception. But no, I mean, I thought there was definitely parts that he could improve on. Obviously, if you didn't watch the game and you look at that 6 for 17, immediately you're like, whoa, what happened there? It's not a good completion percentage. Well, you got to kind of look at his box score doesn't necessarily tell the tape of how he played. The Colts really didn't try a lot of dink and dunk stuff, a lot of underneath stuff. The Colts were really trying to open things up with deep shots to Alec Pierce, throwing it deep to Michael Pittman and Josh Downs, really trying to stretch things out. But we saw what he could do. He hit Kylan Granson over the middle a couple times. Kylan Granson has had a really good preseason, entering his third year, which is great for that tight end room. We saw Drew Ogletree connect with Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman. But we really saw the running ability come out, and just how he freezes defenses, which allowed Deion Jackson and Evan Hall to really make hay, especially in the red zone area. I think that's where we really saw it, because teams were so afraid Anthony Richardson was going to take off and run that it allowed those running backs to go through some of those holes created by the offensive line, which again, that starting offensive line did not look too shabby, especially over on that left side with Bernhard Raimann and Quentin Delson. I'm telling you what, Bernhard Raimann is going to have a breakout season. I've been screaming about it since the spring. He's putting that into fruition. His PFF grades have been fantastic, and he's looked it too in the film. But I've digressed. Anthony Richardson, I think, settled in well. Yes, definitely a lot to clean up. Yes, there are still accuracy things that he needs to continue to work through and continue to improve on. But at the same time, again, it didn't look too big for him. And this is what this year is going to be all about: the ups and downs, learning how to really do all of that, and kind of learn from his mistakes, learn from that NFL game, and just continue to improve throughout the season.
Well, and there's been so many like new things on this team, along with this new quarterback who's also inexperienced in his own right, and the fact that he's been able, especially with the tight ends, I have been just on the top of a mountain screaming, get the tight ends involved, and you've seen that. And holy cow, Drew Ogletree, he caught a pass and he basically barely even lowered his shoulders and ran over a Philadelphia Eagles second defender. I don't know which cornerback it was, but good Lord, man, that dude packs a punch when he's got that football. So, I mean, maybe that's a guy that he starts throwing to. But yeah, Granson and Ogletree, boy, they looked really good with Richardson. And it's just nice to see him throwing to your running backs, throwing to the wide receivers, throwing to the tight ends. He's not focusing in and eyeing in one guy. He's legitimately looking for the open passes and going through his progressions. He's going to miss throws. That's just what this whole thing is about. That's why Steichen's in the building, is to clean that up. So, yeah, I'm right there with you. Again, there's a lot of things he's got to polish up. Please, everyone, I'll say this every episode till he plays. Temper your expectations. I know that everyone wants to think he's going to win a Super Bowl. You got to be patient. At times you're going to be like, ooh, that was bad. You got to think long term. Those things are going to get cleaned up, and you kind of saw that as the game went along too.
Shout out to the Fins Tailgate channel.
Yeah, Dolphins.
Hit the like button. Great channel. We really appreciate you tuning in. The Colts and the Dolphins, obviously, the two have been reported to be in heated discussions for Jonathan Taylor. So it's nice that a Dolphins channel tuning in tonight. But going back onto Anthony Richardson, I want to highlight this from Stats Matt, also keeping his eyes downfield when scrambling and not looking to run. Yeah, I mean, that's something that really has stood out to me is when Anthony Richardson has taken off, he isn't immediately like looking at his first read, Drake, and if it's not there, he's taking off and trying to run. He's going through his progressions. He only gets outside the pocket when the pressure starts to get to him. But when he does, he still keeps his eyes down the field, looking to pass first and run second. So when you look at the stats as a whole for his two preseason outings, 13 of 29, which equals about 45% completion percentage, 145 yards with that interception against the Bills, and then 7 carries for 45 yards. So again, not stats that light the world on fire by any means, but again, the stats don't tell the story with how Anthony Richardson has performed in these first two preseason games, in my opinion. So Drake, when you think about how he performed against the Eagles and then going all the way back to how he did in his first action against the Bills, really how have you liked his progression through this preseason? Have you seen the progression? Do you wish there was more there? Kind of explain your thinking.
Yeah, real quick, we got a new guy. I believe it's Alida Persian. Thank you so much for the wonderful comment. Really appreciate you jumping in here. I did see improvement. Now you look at the Bills game. I think he was 7 for 12. Then you look at the Eagles game and he was 6 for 17. Okay, you might think, oh, regression. No, not at all. I think that he played a good game. I think that he's shown signs of improvement as he's taken snaps and had drives. 2 areas stick out to me. In the Bills game, he threw a pick, a bad interception that gave Buffalo incredible field position. Turns around, leads a scoring drive. Okay, then go into the Eagles game. Colts have a rough start. They punt the football. Eagles turn it over on downs. Then what happens? Anthony Richardson at quarterback leads a scoring drive, and Deion Jackson punches it in for a score. So this is a guy that above all, we've talked about mental, because he's got the physicals, he's got the arm strength, he's going to learn how to throw better. He's going to have to learn to take some pepper off some of those throws because some of them are just ridiculous how hard he throws the ball. And these guys are 10 yards away, and I mean, it could puncture a metal sheet with how hard this guy throws. So he needs to dial that back, but that's just going to come with form and teaching. It's all up here. You can't teach this. You have to try to develop what he already has. Man, this guy recovers from making big mistakes. That is huge for a guy as inexperienced as he is. I just really like the way that he's been able to bounce back from having mistakes, and he doesn't really tend to make the same ones. You're still going to see inaccuracy at times, and you're going to see hiccups here and there, but he just seems like he's slowly making an uptick. No matter what he does, he's always trying to forward his thinking and forward his play and become more efficient with the football.
I agree. And I think the biggest thing for me that I've gathered throughout the preseason, I know I've said this multiple times, but the moment just hasn't been too big for Anthony Richardson.
Not at all.
He's easily been able to handle everything that is thrown his way. Yes, there's been mistakes. Yes, he could have thrown better balls at times. but it hasn't been too big. He's been able to absorb everything very, very quickly. And Shane Steichen talked about it after the Eagles game on that throw that was on an absolute rope to Kylan Granson over towards that left side. That wasn't what the play was originally supposed to be. Anthony Richardson audibled out of that, checked it at the line of scrimmage, got them into that play, and was able to put them in a situation where they could gain 15, 17 yards with an absolutely incredible throw. And then shout out to Kylan Granson for bringing in that rocket too. It was a great catch. So the mental side we have seen hasn't been too big for him. Obviously, defenses are going to take a step up when we get to the regular season because teams will actually be scheming against Anthony Richardson. They'll be showing him one thing pre-snap and another post-snap. So that's obviously going to be an adjustment period for Anthony Richardson. But Shane Steichen and his offense are going to be scheming too. He's going to be working to get Anthony Richardson easy throws, easy completions to get him into that rhythm, to get the Colts moving down the field. So I've really liked this progression. I think he has shown me that he is more than ready to be the starting quarterback for this Indianapolis Colts team. And that's all I really wanted to see this preseason is if it was too big for him, it obviously isn't. And can he handle and command this offense? And he has shown that he can do that. So with all of that combined, now you just got to let him go out there, make his mistakes, have his very high highs, which I know that there's going to be, have his low moments as well, and just allow him to learn from that. So, but with that being said, obviously, I mean, he is going to be a rookie coming into this season. Do you have any concerns, Drake, moving forward with Anthony Richardson at quarterback, or any concerns for him as we get closer to week one in less than 2 weeks?
I mean, look, I love what he's done, but absolutely there's concerns. I mean, he's so young and so raw. I mean, there's going to be concerns. I think that as he starts to play those number one defenses consistently, I'll go back to it. He's got to take velocity off that football. He's got to adjust his throws to short power, intermediate power, deep passing power. He treats it all like it's deep. So he's going to have to try to mitigate that, because if he throws it too hard, you're going to see balls bounce right off receivers' hands up into the air for easy interceptions. That's going to have to be number one. He still tries to throw into coverage at times. He trusts his arm. You got to love the confidence, but he will still try to force that ball thinking that he can outpace a defensive player. And he's got to remember, this isn't college. This is the NFL. They're going to take that back on you. As in against Philly, it almost happened. So he was this close to having to run down a defensive player for a touchdown, but he's just got to continue working on footwork, continue working on the fundamentals, work on your release, and work on the accuracy. These are all things, the good news for Colts fans, these are all things that can be ironed out with good coaching, good pacing, and understanding that this is what is going to happen. It's going to be a long process. You're not going to get a finished product with this guy till 2024 or 2025. Okay, maybe even a little bit later than that. So you just got to temper expectations and just let him get through these mistakes.
Patience is going to be the key with Anthony Richardson all season long. So as we wrap up talking about Anthony Richardson today, what was your overall grade for his performance this preseason?
I think that I would give him, I had a B, but I'll even say a B plus, because he's so unbelievably inexperienced. I've never seen a guy that's been drafted with such a small sample of starting at quarterback. But man, I think that he's done just fine. I think that he looks composed, calm. I think that he's the guy that you always worry about with rookies. Are they going to get in their head if they make mistakes? Clearly, this isn't going to be the case. Clearly, he's going to bounce back from it. So that was my biggest worry. I'd give him a B plus. I think that as he starts to get acquainted to the offense, acquainted with his teammates, and starts to get a feel for what real NFL defenses play like, he's just going to improve. I think he's an incredibly smart kid, 4.0 GPA in college. He understands football, and he's got an incredible offensive mind coaching him and teaching him along the way, along with other guys like JVC and Cam Turner. So a B plus is a very solid grade for Anthony Richardson.
Yep, that's where I'm at. B plus to B. And I think that's if Anthony Richardson can hold that grade throughout his rookie season, the Colts are going to be just fine, and they'll live with that. And again, he's going to have moments where Anthony Richardson looks like an absolute superstar in this league. There's going to be other moments in other games where he's going to really struggle. That's just being a rookie in the NFL. But again, it's how he comes back from those mistakes. It's how he improves week to week. And you can see that steady progression throughout the season as he gets more comfortable in Shane Steichen's offense, more comfortable to life and just playing in the NFL and everything that comes with that. So yeah, B to B plus. I thought it was a very solid preseason for Anthony Richardson. He showed me that everything that I needed to see in order for him to be the starting quarterback and me be comfortable with him leading this team from day one. Now it's just going out there, getting the guys around him and helping him develop as quickly as they can. And that's what Shane Steichen, Anthony Richardson, and this entire Colts team will be trying to do over the next 4 months. So, but apart from Anthony Richardson, obviously the biggest storyline all off season and all summer has been Jonathan Taylor, and now things are seemingly coming to a head. So we are getting closer to the self-imposed timeline that the Colts put on Jonathan Taylor and his agent Malkikawa to find a trade partner. The deadline that they put was 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow on Tuesday. That coincides with when roster cutdowns take place. So as of right now, the Colts are in negotiations with 2 teams. We know that the Miami Dolphins have put in an offer. There is another team out there that is in the mix as well. I have an idea of who it is, but I haven't been able to confirm it. So I'm not going to give that name out on the show until I can confirm it. But it looks like things are. It seems like the Dolphins are the most interested team right now, Drake.
And it makes sense. I remember I was actually on a Twitter space. I refuse to say X space. So a Twitter space, talking with some Dolphins writers, content creators, and stuff like that. And they were just really interested to hear about our thoughts. It's a perfect fit. I mean, they're one piece away from a potential deep playoff run. And I think that a guy like Jonathan Taylor could be that dude. But look, at the end of the day, there's a lot of teams that could benefit from Jonathan Taylor. There's teams, I guarantee you there's at least 2 teams no one's even heard about, that no one's talking about. Kind of like when Matt Stafford was supposed to be a Colt. Here come the Los Angeles Rams to take him away. Like, no one talked about that. So ever since that happened, I was like, look, I never just believe it for face value that 1 or 2 teams is interested in a player of this ability. So while the Dolphins seem to be the front runner right now because they make the most sense, that does not mean that's where he's going to end up. And it also doesn't mean he's going to be traded at all. So I do think, though, the Dolphins make the most sense. They're like 1 player away from potentially competing with the Bills for, to take the AFC East.
Right, and it's funny that you mentioned the Rams because they have been one of the teams most interested in Jonathan Taylor throughout this process, and the Rams very well could be that second team that is kind of in contention for Jonathan Taylor's services. So, and people might ask, why haven't the Colts? If the Colts have an offer that they like, why haven't they traded him yet? Well, there's 2 reasons for that. The more teams you get involved, the more chance there is for a bidding war for Jonathan Taylor's services. And at this point, there's really no need to trade him right now when, as they get closer to the deadline, it can cause more and more teams like the Dolphins or the Rams to say, well, what's something that we can add, just a little sweetener to get this thing over the finish line to ensure that we're the ones that end up with Jonathan Taylor at the end of this. So while it may seem like there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I really want this to be done and over with, or I don't think the Colts are going to trade Jonathan Taylor at all. At 4 p.m., and we talked about that. I forget who it was at the very beginning. It was, let me go right back here, NFL Nerd talking about the deadline. Seriously, it is a deadline for the Colts because the Colts, if they can't find a trade that they like by then, they're not going to entertain trade talks anymore for Jonathan Taylor. And they will say to Jonathan Taylor and his agent, you are no longer allowed to speak with other teams to try to find a trade partner. So that is the deadline that the Colts have set. Doesn't mean that the Colts can't trade him later in the season, but just at this time, they wouldn't be accepting any more trade offers. So as we get closer to this, it does seem like there will be a resolution tomorrow. And if Jonathan Taylor does get traded, Drake and I will be live tomorrow night to break it all down for sure. So make sure you tune into that. But yeah, that's kind of what the deadline is all about. It's not a deadline by NFL rules, but it's a deadline that the Colts have set, meaning either find a trade that or a trade partner that will meet our demands by that time, or there's not going to be a trade for the foreseeable future at least.
Yeah, and look, they've got the regular season right around the corner. They want to get to the roster cuts. They want to be focused on, because it's so difficult to cut people. It's not easy to do that, especially when it's like a neck and neck race for a spot on the team. So they want to focus on that. They don't want to focus on this. So setting that deadline makes perfect sense because they want to get this figured out. They want to know, is Jonathan Taylor going to be a part of this 53-man roster? Because that's huge. Because if he's not, that's an entire other body they have to replace him with. So they need to figure this out. So I can absolutely understand why they set that deadline. And I think that if anything happens, it's going to kind of, I think we talked about it earlier. It's probably going to be like 1 or 2 p.m. tomorrow, right up to the last second. So don't hold your breath. There's a really good chance that if something happens at all, it's not going to happen today.
No, it'll probably happen tomorrow when the deadline gets close, within the couple hours. And here's the thing too, with this whole Jonathan Taylor saga, is that especially when it comes to the Dolphins, like these talks have been going on for a while now. So the Colts actually rejected, and I have this on good authority, the Colts actually rejected the Dolphins' first offer. So they have been going back and forth, where the Colts, what the Dolphins first offered was not to the equivalent of what a first round pick would be. And the Colts said, we're not even going to start there. You have to at least be in that ballpark of a first round pick or an equivalent to a first round pick. Otherwise, we are not going to entertain any of those talks. So obviously the Dolphins have gotten a little bit closer to that because there is still currently an offer on the table. The Colts haven't said no to it yet, but it's not to the point where the Colts want it to be. So as we get closer to this deadline, deadlines always spur action. So it's going to be kind of who balks first. Do the Dolphins kind of up the ante a little bit and add a sweetener? Do the Rams come in and swoop in and give the offer that the Colts want? Do the Colts just end up taking the best that they can get, regardless if it's a first round equivalent or not? Or is this all for talk? And when we get to 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, Jonathan Taylor may still be a Colt. And to your point, Drake, about him being on the active roster, if Jonathan Taylor still hasn't come off the PUP list now, there's no reason to think that Jonathan Taylor is going to come off the PUP list if he's not traded. He will probably revert to the reserve, physically unable to perform list, and then he would be out at least the first 4 games with the Colts this season.
Yeah, and that's a whole other wrinkle because I know that people may get excited if he doesn't find a suitor, but it's all still hinging for the Colts. If he stays on the Colts, then it's even more important than ever, that PUP designation, because if it sticks and it stays and he still can't, get healthy, you're not going to see him for the first couple games of the year. So a whole other, side of this giant dramatic situation. So we're just going to have to see what the next, I think it's, let me see, I think it's like 20 hours we'll present before the deadline. Yeah, yes. 20 hours. So it seems like a long time. It really isn't. It's not very long at all.
It's not. And as we get closer to this deadline, Drake, I'm going to ask you just point blank. Do you think Jonathan Taylor is traded by that 4 p.m. deadline?
I really do. I think that he's going to find. I think that it's not because the Colts want to trade him, right? I think that someone's going to want him so bad they're going to give the Colts what they desire. I don't know if it's going to be a first-round pick. I think it's going to be more if it happens on the side of the package that equates to a first-rounder. There's teams that are just on the cusp, and even teams we haven't talked about. I think we heard the Ravens. I know that they might not. There's been talks about, well, they don't have the cap space, this and that. Look, if they can move things around to put a guy like Jonathan Taylor in that backfield with Lamar frickin' Jackson and Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham and Mark Andrews, they're going to do it, okay? Like, they're going to figure this out. That's also – I think the Colts put that asking price so high for 2 reasons. 1, they don't want to give him up. But 2, if they do give him up, well, they damn sure as hell are not going to give him up for anything small. So that's my prediction. I think he gets dealt just because teams can really use him. There's teams that just are one or two pieces away, and this is a big piece to get to the Super Bowl.
And you're exactly right. The Colts, obviously, when this whole thing started, the reason they made it a first rounder equivalent is because ideally they wouldn't have to trade Jonathan Taylor. They would be able to keep him. Taylor gets healthy, he produces, and the Colts would be more than willing to give him a long-term extension. Obviously, things aren't working out like that, and Taylor wants his money now, and Taylor still isn't healthy either. So at this point, my best educated guess from multiple people that I have talked to, I've been trying to get information pretty much all day, is that I think Jonathan Taylor is traded. I think this comes to an end tomorrow. I think Jonathan Taylor is traded by that 4 p.m. deadline. He will find a new team. There are teams out there willing to give him a contract extension now. The Colts just aren't there yet. They want to see if he can produce in Shane Steichen's offense. They want to see how he can handle being with Anthony Richardson, and they want to see him come back healthy. And that's the Colts' prerogative as a team. That's Chris Ballard and Jim Irsay's as the owner and general manager. That's their right. Whether it's right or wrong, only time will tell. But as of right now, I do think that Jonathan Taylor will not be with the Indianapolis Colts after tomorrow. I think he has a new team in the NFL. So, but Drake, as we kind of talk about getting closer to week one, Anthony Richardson starting for the Colts. Will Jonathan Taylor be out there week one for the Colts? I think all of our fans, and I want to give a shout out to everybody joining us tonight. We're well over 100 live viewers tonight currently with you guys. So we really do appreciate it. And so does the great people over at the Fans First Sports Network. So guys, obviously if you're tuning in, you're a fan of the Indianapolis Colts or another NFL team. So would you love to attend your favorite team's week one game? Well, you're in luck. Fans First Sports Network is giving away 4 free tickets to the week one NFL game of your choice. And Drake, here's the kicker, up to $5,000. So it's not just any like $30 tickets up in the nosebleeds or anything. You can get 4 free tickets up to $5,000. At a lot of stadiums, that is the first row 50-yard line. You easily be able to score tickets for that, and it's pretty incredible, this offer that the people at Fans First Sports Network are putting out for you guys. So guess what? The rules, how do you enter? Very, very simple. All you have to do is go to contest.fansfirstsports.com. Again, that's contest.fansfirstsports.com and fill out the appropriate information. That's it. That's literally it. You don't have to follow anything on social media. You don't have to retweet or repost anything. All you do is go to contest.fansfirstsports.com. And once you've done that, you've been officially registered to win the 4 free tickets to any week one NFL game. What are you waiting for? Go enter for your shot at seeing your favorite team in action at contest.fansfirstsports.com. Contest ends Monday, September 4th. So make sure you go there now and get entered to win those 4 free tickets. All right, Drake. So we've talked about Anthony Richardson. We've talked about Jonathan Taylor. The other big story for the Indianapolis Colts and every other team in the NFL, roster cuts. Roster cuts are upon us. Probably the hardest time for NFL coaches across the league. Literally, hundreds of NFL players will be losing their jobs by tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. It's not a fun time for the NFL. Coaches don't want to do this, and for some players, Drake, this will be their last day on an NFL team. They will never play a down in the NFL again, which is just the sad part of all of this. So it's a very heart-wrenching time for these coaches, but it's part of the business of the NFL. So let's dive into what the Colts have done so far, Drake. So as of 7:35 p.m. Eastern today, here are all the cuts that the Colts have made. Running back Kenyon Drake wide receiver Brashad Perriman, wide receiver James Washington, wide receiver Tyler Adams, wide receiver Cody Case. So a lot of wide receivers there. Tight ends Nick Eubanks and Michael Jacobson. Offensive tackle Matthew Vanderslice, guard Amila Kior, guard Dakota Shepley. Then moving to the defensive side of the ball, defensive tackle Caleb Sampson, linebacker Donovan Mutton, safety Tease Tabor, and kicker Lucas Haversick. So those are all the cuts that they have made so far. There's going to be more to come tomorrow for the Colts to get down to that 53-man mark for the regular season. So out of those guys that I just mentioned, Drake, were there any surprises there in your mind?
There were two. Brashad Perriman, that was a surprise to me, and Donovan is it Mutton?
Mutton, yes.
Mutton. Those were surprises, and the reason they were surprises is I know Brashad Perriman, you mentioned something, you nailed it when you had posted earlier about it, that he really didn't show himself out in camp at all. You weren't like, well, there's Brashad Perriman with a big play. You weren't saying that, but I just feel like his skill set being such a deep threat, the dude averages almost 17 yards a catch in his career. Okay, like this guy is a deep threat. So I figured he would be a perfect fit for Richardson. Didn't pan out. I don't think that he was a good fit for the offense. Maybe not Richardson, but for the offense, he wasn't a good fit. And Mutton had a good offseason. I thought he had moments in camp where you were pretty excited. But, again, there's a lot of players. There's like 90 players. They got to cut 37 of these guys. That's a lot of people you got to get rid of. So I understand it. It does kind of surprise me, though, because I feel like linebacker's a position where they might need some depth. But, again, you got guys like Grant Stewart. Maybe they're like, look, this dude's a dog. Maybe he's the guy. Maybe JoJo Doman's the guy. But those two surprised me. Those two stood out.
Yeah, Brashad Perriman, I thought when the Colts signed him, he might have had a chance to make the roster as a backup. But as of right now, it seems like those guys that are on the back end of the roster for that wide receiver spot, especially with Ashton Dulin out for the season, those guys are going to have to be special teamers. So like Isaiah McKenzie, while he may not be the starting slot anymore, McKenzie is the Colts' top return man, and he will have an impact on special teams. In my 53-man roster prediction, that's the reason I put Juwan Winfrey as the guy that makes it as that fifth wide receiver is because of his help on special teams. So that's definitely what the Colts are looking for those back end of the roster players. It's how it's always been under Chris Ballard and will continue to be. One guy that I did want to kind of point out, though, Drake, is a guy that we were pretty high on and thought he could possibly even take that starting spot at right guard, and that's Amila Kior. Amila Kior just did not pan out with the Colts. Signed as an undrafted free agent, and we thought with his pedigree at Alabama, he was projected to be around a 4th or a 5th round pick in this year's draft. That medical issue popped up at the combine, which allowed him to become an undrafted free agent, and he just did not pan out. I don't think he ever got higher than 3rd team on the Colts offensive line. And when we saw him in preseason action, it just really was not impressive.
Yeah, and he really struggled. He struggled like you would expect an undrafted free agent to, but this guy was quote unquote projected before that heart issue to be a 4th rounder. I did want to point out we've had a Dolphins account in here, and now we have, it looks like a Jaguars account saying, "Hi, little ponies, how you doing?" We're doing great, and we're doing even better now knowing that we have some divisional rivalry in here supporting us. So thank you so much for checking us out. But yeah, look, Amila Kior, everybody is just so ready for a solution at right guard that they were just like, this guy's going to work out. He was a 4th rounder. He was a diamond in the rough. It's going to be just like Josh Downs when he fell to the Colts, and Darius Rush and Jalen Jones. They all fell. Well, there's a reason now looking back while Amila Kior fell. And it was a little bit of the health issue, but I think it was more so that teams just felt like he wasn't ready for NFL speed.
Right. And now with all those guys already cut and with still more to come, there very well could be some surprising cuts, some guys that just are on that very edge that aren't able to make it, that the Colts are hoping to bring back onto the roster and on the practice squad. So, Drake, which cut are you expecting that's going to be a little bit surprising or might not be something Colts fans expect?
All right, so there's two. Both of them are going to make me sad to say, but I think that Titus Leo is a potential cut. And the reason that makes me sad is because, man, has he had a great preseason. I mean, he's just been all over the field. He started the play that resulted in a pick six from Darius Rush. He's put pressure on the quarterback. He's done solid in run defense. He's come off the edge fast and quick like they expected him to. But I do think that there's a lot of competition at defensive end. I think that they're gonna bring in or they're gonna be bringing a lot of an importance on defensive end pressure because they didn't have a lot of pass rush last season. So I do think there's going to be a way that he doesn't make the roster, but also Will Mallory. I think Will Mallory, that one probably hurts me the most to say because I think Kylan Granson's the guy. I think Kylan Granson's that move tight end. I don't think you need two. I think that they've got Andrew Ogletree, who's the do-it-all tight end. You got Mo, who's the vet. You've got Jelani, who's the starter. And then you've got Kylan Granson, who is Will Mallory, only with experience and understands the offense. And Richardson's been just hitting him like a tight end one. So I think that those are probably the two surprise cuts that could happen that I wouldn't be surprised if I saw.
Yeah, and that's one that I really grappled with today, Drake, when I was putting my piece together is Will Mallory on that tight end spot, because honestly I think he has had a fantastic preseason he's a really good move tight end and he's got potential. But when you look, Kylan Granson does a lot of the same things that Will Mallory does. And going into year 3, Kylan Granson has looked really, really good. A healthy Drew Ogletree does a lot of the same things. A former wide receiver, Drew Ogletree, does a lot of those same things. So he can be that backup move tight end that you're talking about. I still think Mo Alley-Cox makes the roster because outside of him, the Colts really don't have a blocky tight end. You could say Jelani Woods can evolve into that, but he's not there yet. Mo Alley-Cox still offers the best blocking tight end for the Colts right now. So if I had to pick a tight end that I think Will Mallory would replace, it would be Mo Alley-Cox, but I still think the Colts need a blocking tight end, and we know it's not going to be Pharaoh Brown, okay? That ship has sailed. So I do think Mo Alley-Cox sneaks in, makes the roster. He's that veteran presence in that young tight end room, and he's going to end up being that blocking tight end in Shane Steichen's offense.
Yeah, and that's we can kind of transition because I know that next week we're going to talk about who we think is a surprise to make the roster. Well, that's mine. Is everyone's been talking? Look, it's a tough business. All right, it's cutthroat at times. It seems that way, but when we cover teams, as Pat McAfee said, you're a prisoner of the moment. Okay, there's been multiple times where I've thought Mo isn't worth of the contract. He hasn't even had 100 catches since 2017 when he became an Indianapolis Colt. Okay, Mo this, Mo that. I'm going to play on the other side of things. He also hasn't had any consistency at quarterback. He's had 3 coaches. Okay, he's been, I think, utilized in weird ways outside of when Nick Sirianni was the offensive coordinator and Phillip Rivers was the quarterback. That's when Mo actually started looking like he was going to do something in the NFL. So I think that's the guy who makes the roster. And I think he makes the roster because they want Richardson to throw to vets at the tight end position. They want him to be surrounded by, because it's a young team already. You got to value the veterans you have. You got to really hold on to those guys and cherish them. And even though I've been a big supporter of Mo getting cut, looking at the situation now, it makes sense that he will stay. And it makes sense because he may, minus Pharaoh Brown, be the best blocking tight end on the roster.
Yeah, and I've got 2. I think one is JoJo Doman, who I think he makes the roster just because he adds, again, solid depth at linebacker, and he's a special teams ace. That's what the Colts are going to look for. And then my other surprise is Tony Brown. Tony Brown is going to be that backup nickel to Kenny Moore. He has been for a couple years, and with Ashton Dulin out for the year, guys, this makes a difference. That gunner spot is going to be much more valuable for the Colts to try to fill. And Tony Brown has experience at gunner and has been one of the starters at gunner for the Colts all preseason long. So I think Tony Brown makes the roster. He and Jalen Jones will probably be those gunners on the outside. So those are some guys that maybe you aren't looking for that will end up making the roster, I think. But I know the Colts, it's going to be tough. I do think it's going to be tough for the Colts to get Will Mallory onto the onto the practice squad, but I think the Colts are going to try their best because, and who knows, maybe they surprise me and actually keep Will Mallory on the 53 man roster. It's going to be pretty insane. But I do think we can all agree on this. The Colts are definitely going to be active in the waiver market because there's going to be depth on the offensive line that needs to be added. You could see some maybe Jawan Winfrey is kept, but there's another wide receiver added for the back of the roster. Certainly the running back market could be scoured as well. The Colts, because they were so bad last year, they have the 4th waiver priority when all these cuts take place. So if a team has a higher waiver priority than another team, and they're both putting claims for the same player, the team with the higher waiver priority will get that player. So I have a feeling that the Colts are going to use that to their advantage. And just because these guys, the final cuts are made tomorrow at 4, I don't know. I don't see that being the final roster for week 1. I think the Colts are going to be very, very active and make some changes to add some guys, especially for the depth reason. And I would look at offensive line as that top priority.
Yeah, and we had a busy day today, but I have a feeling it's going to be a busy day tomorrow too. Because look, the Colts have been waiting patiently for, I think, this exact moment right here. And you've already seen a cut. I think it was Dunn. I think Dunn, Dunn. I believe he's one of the
Michael Dunn.
Yeah, like that's a name that's already been like, go sign him, go sign him, go sign him. These guys that are getting cut, I've already seen people kind of like say, well, do you want someone that gets cut? Look, just because they weren't a fit somewhere else doesn't mean they can't be a fit in Indianapolis, because the Colts need depth offensive line desperately. So they also need other positions with depth. So don't be surprised if you see them busy tomorrow, busy after that 4:00 deadline. You might even see a flurry of some signings and some new names brought to the Colts just to see what they can bring from a depth perspective, to multiple positions for the team that really need it.
Right, exactly. So make sure you keep it locked in and tuned in to horseshoehuddle.com, because we will have all the latest moves as soon as they happen. Just so that way you guys know as soon as the Colts make any moves. So make sure you keep tuned in to horseshoehuddle.com for that. So Drake, let's wrap up the episode and talk about the latest Colts news and rumors here. There are a few things that I wanted to get to inform the people about. Number one is Shaq Leonard. Shaq Leonard dealing with that concussion that he suffered in the joint practices with the Bears. Looks like he is on his way back. So Shaq Leonard was back at practice yesterday in a red non-contact jersey, which is the last step in the concussion protocol. So it looks like that concussion, Shaq Leonard is making a full recovery from that, and I would expect him back and ready to go within the next couple of days. And then as long as nothing happens, no tweaks, no setbacks, Shaq Leonard will be in that starting lineup week 1 against the Jaguars.
Yeah, and everyone's a little bit skittish just because of the back injury, but look, he has had nothing but progress. And me and Andrew have just been marveling over the fact that we got to see him so much during training camp. So be excited, because Shaq Leonard really does. I don't want to put the expectations too high, but he looks like he is going to be ready for week 1 for sure.
Right. He's going to be ready for week 1. And again, it's going to probably take about a month for him to ramp up in live actual football games. But from what I've seen in training camp, Shaquille Leonard is on his way back to being the Shaquille Leonard of old. So that's all very, very good to see. Now, we just talked about the tight end room, Drake, and some of the guys that might make it, some that might not. Jelani Woods, we've talked about how the expectations for him have been huge of coming into this season, and he's been really banged up. He's missed almost all of training camp, all of the preseason actions. Well, our buddy Nate Atkins at the Indy Star reported this weekend that Jelani Woods is dealing with a torn hamstring. Obviously, the Colts haven't really dug or divulged into the severity of it. Shane Steichen did say that he's hoping to have him back sooner rather than later. So it does look like Woods is at least getting closer to returning to action. But obviously a torn hamstring isn't good. It's a not a season-ending injury, but it's definitely an injury that takes quite a long time to recover from. So, and with the Colts and their plans for Jelani Woods, especially wanting to get him out there, use that 6'7" frame with Anthony Richardson in the passing game, you're hoping Jelani Woods can make a quick can rejoin this team quickly and try to be out there for week 1 against Jacksonville.
Yeah, and I'm not taking down my jersey. I'm not taking down my Jelani Woods jersey. I am quite upset about the injury designation, but Nate Atkins, what a guy there at Indy Star, great source. It is a little bit disheartening to hear that a guy that has so much potential, and you were just like, oh, it's just a tweak, it's just a an ache or something. It's a lot worse. Now, the thing is, it can be rehabbed, but I mean, what would you think, Andrew? Are you thinking like it could be like week 4 or 5 for that injury rehabs? Or I mean, I know it's not definite, but like generally a torn hamstring, that's like quite a while, isn't it?
It all just depends on the grade. I mean, if it's just a partial tear, like a grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, that's really what it depends on. And it doesn't seem like it's going to keep him out for too much longer, the way Shane Steichen has talked, because usually when Shane Steichen talks about these things, that if it's going to be an injury that's going to last for a bit longer, he usually says it in fewer so words, but it does sound like he's on the come up. So it seems like maybe Jelani Woods has turned the corner in that hamstring recovery. It did happen in the 3rd practice of training camp back towards the end of July. So we're already closing in on a month that Jelani Woods has been out. So, I mean, his status definitely is up in the air for week 1. But hopefully we can start seeing him back at practice towards either the end of this week or early next week as the Colts prepare for Jacksonville. Otherwise, if you don't see that, then I think it's a long shot Jelani Woods plays in week 1. And hopefully the next time we talk to Shane Steichen, we can get a little bit more information about the recovery for Jelani Woods, because he's going to be a big asset for the Colts this year and for Anthony Richardson in that passing game. Another injury, and this one was to a guy that actually wasn't playing too bad. He was showing out and showing that he could be a solid backup center like he has been for the past few years for the Colts. Danny Pinter. Unfortunately, Danny Pinter, Shane Steichen confirmed that he is out for the season. Danny Pinter will be going on IR probably tomorrow when the Colts make their final roster moves. He did break his ankle in that game against the Eagles on Thursday night. A tough blow for a kid that is in a contract year as well, and was one of the guys that could probably be relied upon. While he isn't a great interior offensive lineman, he's certainly a guy that you feel comfortable with as that backup center. Now the Colts will be without Danny Pinter for the 2023 season.
And look, again, they played him at right guard. He wasn't a solution there. It's a totally different position than center. When they moved him back to center and he got those snaps at that position in the preseason, he was playing pretty good. He had more of like a resurgence. So that injury, though, you saw him twist and fall to the ground, and you saw his teeth. You saw him just in a lot of pain, and it's just never good to see that. All that we can say is, number one, the Colts have got to address this now. They've got to address this missing piece now. But you just hope that Danny Pinter can get back to square one sooner rather than later. And hey, you know what? I'd be just fine with him staying on the Colts. He's a solid backup center, and that's somebody that you want just in case your starter goes down.
Right. And just kind of it reinforces the fact that the Colts need to be looking for interior offensive linemen when cuts are made, and to use that waiver priority aggressively. So we're going to talk about some of the other injuries that are currently up right now. Mo Alley Cox was not at practice yesterday. I'm not 100% certain if that's, again, with his foot that's been bothering through the preseason or a new injury. The Colts did not dive into that. Will Fry's still dealing with a calf. Zaire Franklin missed practice as well with an undisclosed injury. EJ Speed is currently in the concussion protocol. So definitely some injuries at linebacker to keep an eye on. And then, unfortunately, these rookie cornerbacks, again, hit with injuries. Juju Brents had a hamstring injury that popped up last week. Again, tweaked that hamstring. So you're hoping he's available for week 1, but it's getting kind of close there. And Darius Rush also not practicing with an undisclosed injury. So some heavy hitters on that injury list. Thankfully, the Colts again have still over a week and a half before they play against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So hoping to get a lot of those guys back so the Colts can be close to full strength for week 1.
Yeah, and you don't want to have your defensive back room, which is already young and might need some depth, depleted when you have to face Zay Jones, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, and Evan Ingram. So the Colts, luckily, like you said, they've got time to either continue to sign people or just to get those two right back to square one with their health.
Exactly. And then the final bit of news that came out, honestly, right before or just a little bit before we came on live tonight, former Colts cornerback Isaiah Rodgers Sr. Was signed by the Philadelphia Eagles today and placed on the suspended list. So Isaiah Rodgers Sr. is still serving that full year suspension for betting on NFL games. He will serve that this year, but as long as he is reinstated by the league next year, Isaiah Rodgers Sr. will be suiting up with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024, and he gets another shot in the NFL.
Well, I'll tell you, the fact that he has a chance to play for the Philadelphia Eagles, that's scary because that guy's got a lot of potential. And look, I know he's screwed up. I know he's not a Colt anymore. I wish him the best. I hope that he figures everything out. I hope that he has a prosperous and long NFL career. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it. Good for Isaiah Rodgers, and maybe just take a little bit of time to kind of let this all sink in, come back stronger than ever.
Yeah, Isaiah Rodgers Sr. I want to, and we said this at the time, but I want to reiterate this. He is not a bad person. I mean, he's a good kid and a kid that works his butt off to get to where he is. So I'm happy that he's very remorseful for what he did, and I'm happy he's able to get a second chance in the NFL, and I hope he makes the most of that second opportunity. So that's our show.
Delete your sports betting app.
Yeah, delete your sports betting app, that's for sure. But that's our show for this evening, guys. Really appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. We had an incredible amount of live viewers. I think we topped out at over 135 live viewers at once tonight, which is absolutely incredible. You guys are absolutely rocking it out. There's so many comments in the chat that I can't even highlight or shout out to most of you guys. We'll give a shout out to our 2 super chats, my wife Danielle Moore and Lawrence Stogner for the super chats tonight. You guys really make this fun, and going into a very exciting Colts season, we hope you come back and join us every week and come along for the ride as we dive into every aspect of Colts football all season long. So please, if you haven't done so already, follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on Twitter, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I go live, whenever Shad goes live with the Saddle Up show on Wednesdays, so you never miss an episode. And then if you cannot catch us live, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, Drake and I are on there as well for the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. So please subscribe, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us reach other Colts fans just like you. So Drake, I mean, we've all been just grinding hard at work to bring you guys every bit of Colts content we can to keep you up to date on horseshoehuddle.com. Please, Drake, go ahead and tell the people what they can find on horseshoehuddle.com that you've written.
Well, the Colts made us do a lot of work today, so I'll keep it to 2 pieces only. The JT situation and how he's likely to be traded based off of Ian Rappaport's breaking news on the Pat McAfee show. Go check out my take on that. But I did a personal piece where I said, could the Anthony Richardson and Evan Hall quarterback-running back combination theoretically work in Indianapolis?
Drake has been absolutely killing it. Please go check out all of his work on horseshoehuddle.com. For myself, I had a piece come out on Friday about Anthony Richardson and how he is going to make offense fun again in Indianapolis. And we've already seen that in the preseason. That's going to expand once we get into the regular season. And then today I dropped my 53-man roster prediction. So every position group from number 1, Anthony Richardson, to number 53 and Luke Rhodes, the long snapper. Go check out every player I have making the final cut on the Colts roster by tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. So you can check out those pieces and all the other work by the great writers at horseshoehuddle.com. You can follow Drake on Twitter or X at DWalsterDrake. You can follow myself at Andrew Moore NFL, and we will be back Thursday night, unless there is a Jonathan Taylor trade. If there is a Jonathan Taylor trade, we will be back here live tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern. But if not, you can catch us on the Horseshoe Huddle Halftime, our audio-only episode on Wednesday. And our next live show will be Thursday night to talk more Colts football with you all. So until then, enjoy your week and enjoy your evening, Colts fans.